Hello, how are you? Let's get into the details of what's happening in the world. Hey, well, something big is happening in the Strait of Hormuz. There are already troop movements involving 10,000 sailors. This is reported by CENTCOM. Let's go to the details, but they say this blockade is spreading along the entire coast of Iran, according to the Pentagon, right? Let's see what China's reaction will be as well. China is drawing a new red line that seems to be crossed more and more, and this, well, is raising alarms about the risks involving China. Also, another issue, a change of course from Germany. Let's talk about that. What's going on? Germany is changing course on Iran. Now let's get to the information. Go ahead and give it a like, friends. Keep liking and sharing, everyone in the chat. Please help us out. Thank you to the whole community and everyone. So, to the whole family of this huge community that is growing little by little. Big shout out to everyone watching us on replay as well. And to those who don't comment, who are the vast majority, you know that about 99.7% of the channel doesn't comment, just saying. 99.7% don't comment on the channel month after month. More or less, about 1 million different people visit us each month. 1 million people. Just imagine, per month. That's the calculation they make here on YouTube. 1 million different people per month, but only a very tiny fraction. They're the ones who actually comment, which really catches my attention. I know many are busy or working and can't comment, but if you can, just saying hello would mean a lot to me. And I think the community would appreciate it too, right? Knowing that so many of you are there, the vast majority are there and, well, they don't comment, and many of them. Some of you aren't even subscribed or don't realize that sometimes the system unsubscribes them, so make sure to check that you're subscribed because this happens very often. Many channels are already reporting that suddenly people appear as unsubscribed. Well, help me out, make sure you're subscribed, and I'm grateful to all of you. Let's get to the information. Arturo, how have you been? Marcela, and everyone in the community who's joining live. Let's get into the details. What's the report for today? The blockade. Let's show the tweet first. This is a tweet about the blockade. The official account of CENTCOM from the US Central Command, and it says the following. Let's go to the report. Let's see, they say. More than 10,000 Marines and US airmen, along with more than a dozen warships and a dozen aircraft, are currently carrying out a total blockade mission on ships entering and leaving Iranian ports during the first 24 hours. They say that no ship, according to them, managed to get through the US blockade. 6 merchant ships complied with the instructions of the United States forces to turn around and re-enter the Iranian port in the Gulf of Oman. The blockade is being enforced impartially against ships of all nations entering or leaving Iranian ports. It doesn't matter which country you come from. If you arrive and depart from the Iranian port, they'll stop you. That's what CENTCOM says, right? Including all Iranian ports in the Arabian Gulf and Gulf of Oman, but only on the Iranian side. The US forces are supporting freedom of navigation for ships passing through the Strait of Hormuz to and from non-Iranian ports. Let's see what the strategy is here. At least the Pentagon's strategy. So first, let's look at the map here. It's about trying to create at least the impression of this. Okay, what are Iran's cards? The card. The strong one is the Strait of Hormuz, so in negotiations what they want is to take power away from that card. Imagine that you're playing poker and let's say you have a very strong card that you know is extremely powerful, right? So what the United States does is take away the strength from that, or at least try to take away the strength from that card, right? So they put the map right now anyway. We put the map that CENTCOM puts up, but I want you to see it here first. This whole line goes from here. This whole line, all of this, let's go, all the oil tankers, cargo ships, whether it's gas or whatever, from Iran in that area, no matter the country of origin, all of these are being stopped. That's what CENTCOM says, and they show the following image. Let's see if we can put it on the screen. They show this image. It's this one. Here they give the explanation I just gave. The Pentagon lays it out here for you in this chart. And it says this is the line, not the red line that's there, the one I showed you a moment ago on the coast of Iran, which is blocked. So the ships coming from there are being detected, they're being monitored, and they can't get through. That's the issue, right? This is having a huge impact on the economy, especially if it ends up spreading. Let's look at what the IMF is reporting about what's happening right now in the Middle East. And then let's also go in a moment to China's reaction, because China, obviously being one of the most affected, is also responding to this situation. And they have already confirmed at least an extension, let's say a new red line, so to speak, which is also obviously causing concern in this matter. So within this blockade of the blockade, because it's a blockade against a blockade, that's what the blockades are. That's today's story. It's about blockades. Blockade against blockade, so to speak. The war with Iran, according to the IMF, has slowed down the global economic momentum. This fueled global inflation, warns the IMF. The war in Iran has slowed down global economic dynamism, the International Monetary Fund said today, Tuesday, April 14th. They state that what is happening right now represents, let's say, the greatest challenge being faced globally from an economic perspective in recent years. The IMF joins the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, which last month also cancelled a planned upward revision because they say the numbers are skyrocketing. Before the war, we were prepared to improve our global growth forecasts. It seemed like everything was going well, says the IMF. I mean, wow, you really have to look at this. Let's see if tonight we can make a list of several global indicators. Which one? What is the perception? And how does the world see the United States? I'm not referring to Iran or any country that's currently in conflict with the United States. No. In general. How do people currently view the United States? What are the global indicators? Just imagine they're going straight down. Because imagine, if suddenly you say, hey, why are prices going up for me? Well, it turns out that someone started a war with someone else and all that, and in the end, it costs you. It costs your household. And what does it cost you? Well, it costs you your life, because in the end, that's what you give when you work. You give your time, your life to your job. And suddenly now I have to work more just to make the same amount, to put food on the table, to provide for that. He says, hey, where does all this come from? Well, from here, from here, from here. Obviously, it's this. It was really just bad marketing, right? Terrible. And the IMF is confirming it. The war in the Middle East, he says, has slowed down the economic momentum. The head of the IMF, economist Pierre-Olivier Gorinchas, writes this. This is in his own blog, where he mentions the closure of the Strait of Hormuz and the severe damage to critical facilities in the Gulf. In a region that is fundamental for the global supply of hydrocarbons, he raises the possibility that we may be entering a serious energy crisis if hostilities continue. The numbers are very clear. The IMF cut the global growth forecast by 0.2% down to even 3.1% for 2026 compared to 3.4% last year. The IMF also significantly raised its forecast for global prices, projecting that inflation will rise to 4.4% this year.
De las estimaciones.
IMF has increased.
Esto van a subir los precios así.
Well, growth a little more than what was expected.
Bueno.
Let's move on to other points as well. I feel the 0.4. Well, China is already making several comments, warnings, countermeasures, as they say, right? About that, because, well, yesterday it wasn't mentioned. The IMF even raised the forecast by 0.4, confirming that they are sending weapons to the Iranians. We are not going to impose 50% tariffs on all the products they want to sell to us. A 50% tariff hits all American companies really hard to begin with. Well, not all of them, but a good part of them. The IMF has represented a high level of purchasing from China, Apple not to mention, and so on. Well, according to China, it issued a strong warning saying they will respond with firm countermeasures if the United States does this. Growth percent.
Aranceles, ellos impondrán también aranceles a
3.4 by the United States. The conflict arises after Donald Trump declared that they will impose a 50% tariff on Chinese products. China is reportedly giving military aid to Iran during the Middle East conflict. The IMF has confirmed that documents from the United States, leaked to various American media outlets, indicate that Beijing is providing air defense systems to Tehran, right? So that means they would step in or get involved. Growth rate at 3.4% IMF intelligence. What I was saying is that China doesn't do it directly. I mean, even though it gets involved, clearly it doesn't do it directly. Let's say visible growth at 3.4%. Yes, for example, let's say they send it to Pakistan or to some other country. No, I don't think to Pakistan, but yes to other countries. And from there, those countries sell it or send it to the Iranians to make it more indirect. The New York Times mentions that China, the IMF has increased all the attention. China completely denies the accusations coming from the New York Times and other US media and says these are not reports from the media. The media or journalist wasn't actually in China witnessing events. These are reports leaked to them by intelligence. The 0.4%, I mean, and then later they make it seem like, oh wow, that's huge. Well, the global growth forecast is at 3.4%. I mean, that's your information. Like, if that's true, well, that's the information you're giving. I mean, it's your intelligence that's providing it. And you do it like a warning that you're going to impose tariffs, right? I mean, if you already see that's your information, then just impose the tariff, right? He obviously won't impose it, and if he does, it'll only be for a few days before removing it. As it's always done the IMF way, it's about releasing information, leaking it, spreading it through the media, and then giving them a slap on the wrist. So to speak, saying behave yourself, because if not, well, no, he's basically going to punish him, right? So it's really strange because it's like talking to a mirror. 3.4%. And many politicians release the report publicly and they react to the report and get upset and say, no, I'm going to impose tariffs. And well, if they wanted to impose them. The global growth forecast has been raised to 3.4%. Or if it's confirmed, then who confirms it? Who is above the intelligence agencies? Well, themselves, right? Or it's just them. So in any case, if you're going to do it, then do it or don't do it. But we're going to be giving the whole report and then you get upset and start making threats. And the United States and China already know how it goes. China is the same as always. The reaction is and has been very, let's say, useful because the reaction has always made Donald Trump back down. The Chinese spokesperson Wang Jinghong has made it clear that he will not accept the United States using the 3.4% growth forecast as an excuse for economic sanctions. The Chinese spokesperson said the IMF has increased the likelihood of a clash between basically two economies that, despite the 3.4%, are dependent on each other. China is the main buyer of Iranian oil, but so is Japan. And as we know, many countries from the Middle East are as well. China generally buys the most from Iran, while Japan purchases heavily from other Gulf countries. It's kind of like that meme of the big sack, this Charlie increasing the forecast by 100.
Charlie, meme, conspiracy.
The IMF is like, this topic feels like that meme. That's how it is. I mean, everything is connected everywhere. And obviously, everyone threatens each other. Everyone talks. But you know that if you threaten him, he's going to do the same thing you're doing to him. And it's going to hit your economy really hard. In fact, the same threat that you're already making, if it were true, yes. 3.4%. IMF would be plummeting right now because it's happened before. When tariffs have been imposed, you don't see this. I mean, today the growth forecast is... They don't believe Trump anymore. Specifically, they know these are just threats. Yes, it's fine. At the moment, it's at 3.4%. This can keep going up because what you produce, you make it in China. You keep making it in China. IMF has it at 100. From your costs, obviously you're going to stop making a lot of profit. This is already such a played out game, so used that it no longer has any effect. Before, when we saw announcements like that, the market would drop. Now they just don't care anymore. And China reacts the way it theoretically should. It's not going to stay silent. Analysts say that the China-Iran relationship is more than just economic and clearly has a military connection. At least that's what the analysts say. That's what they say. The IMF has increased the amount of materials that Iran has. It's not really a surprise. It's just that now, since it's at war because of the situation, it wants to use it, as this person rightly says, to put pressure on global growth in 3.4%. I mean, nothing is going to happen. And if it does, the effect is counterproductive. I mean, that's what's interesting about these times too. Everything is so interconnected that everything depends on everything else, especially the major powers. The IMF has increased the growth forecast by 1%. And even though there's an attempt to be more independent, it still is. By 3.4%. There's also a change of direction in Germany, which really catches my attention because
O sea, damos la posición.
before the IMF increased, the forecast in percent would be the United States, and to say, well, we support 100% and that's it. Whatever the United States says will be fine. The three are the United States, the United Kingdom, France, Germany, in other words, the countries. Percent, they are bypassing them in the negotiations. They go straight to Iran in an urgently called press conference. By the way, in Berlin, Chancellor Merz, that is, they don't have a president there, it's the chancellor. So he came out to say, let's see. We're going to talk and we're going to take a completely different turn. We're going to talk the growth forecast in Iran to promote a peaceful solution and keep the strait open.
Lo mismo.
3.4%. But also as a whole, after this last-minute press conference called by the German Chancellor, Freischner surprised everyone by announcing that Germany, in coordination with the United States and European partners, will actively work through diplomatic channels. They had already said it around April 8th or 9th. The Germans are taking a different path, and this confirms it, obviously. Let's move on to other matters, but look, I'm not surprised things are moving forward so dramatically and that they want to announce it from the Pentagon, from CENTCOM. We're blocking everything the moment we find out that there are already 6 Iranian ships that have left without any problem. I mean, with Iranian oil, not specifically from Iran, but on ships that had been in Iranian ports and left without any trouble. One thing is what's being said, but clearly another is what's being done. Thank you, Aurora. How have you been? Aurora Ortiz, a big greeting to the whole community that's joining in. Thank you very much for your greetings. She's also there listening to you, or rather, reading your messages. Greetings. How have you been, Sergio Para? Greetings to Chile. Very good. He says the solution is that allied countries have to arm themselves with nuclear weapons. If Iran wants nuclear weapons, says Farad. How have you been, Farad? Greetings to Rafael in Miami as well. How have you been, Rafael? Very good. In an ideal world, you would say there are no nuclear weapons. But that's not the situation we live in. Right now, it's a complicated issue. This is a nuclear clash. I mean, without involving nuclear weapons. But what causes this is the nuclear issue. In the end, that's the concern. A while ago, I was telling you that I had seen a report and now it's confirmed. Now, about the drop in oil, about oil production at a global level. Just to give us an idea, around 20 million barrels were produced in that area, including oil, gas, and so on, right? But that's roughly what they estimated. And now, after the collapse, it dropped to about 2 or 3 million barrels coming out of there. So, a lot less has come out, and that has a global impact. And if oil production has suffered a collapse just in oil alone, there have been 10 million barrels lost from the collapse. Just oil. That's since the Middle East war started in March. But the most worrying fact isn't that, because you might say, wow, March was really tough. Luckily, in April, everything is going well, right? Or at least better, right? The outlook, at least according to this organization, the IEA, is that they believe April is or will be worse since the month isn't even halfway over yet. In the monthly oil market report published by the IEA, it says that in March, okay, what they're saying is that they think the effect for April is going to be worse. It can't be fixed just by declaring the war over and shaking hands. That's not how it was settled. Yes, and no. Qatar is going to say, and Bahrain is going to say, and who's going to fix the wall they left here for me? It's going to take 4, 5, 6 years for it to be the way it was before.
¿Verdad?
That's one thing. The other thing is, who's going to convince the millions of tourists who used to visit us every year? Who's going to convince them to come back? Maybe they'll come back someday. Stay a few days, then leave. But who's going to convince us to stay and live there? I mean, remember that they sell properties, they sell apartments, they sell houses. That's a big sector, especially in Dubai. It's growing a lot, or it was growing a lot, and now, well, not anymore, because just imagine who would want to invest. Well, I want to have a house there for my retirement and all that, because it's really nice, really peaceful, there's no stealing, none of that, I don't know, maybe, but bombs could drop on you, so that's it. You don't like it that much anymore, right? So that's also going to have an important effect. Let's move on to other interesting topics. To make an announcement from Vladimir Putin, president of Russia, in which they say they want university students to go to war. It's a serious issue because in the end, your university students are the minds, the brains that you want to revolutionize your country, to bring innovation and so on. But right now, there are posters in the hallways of the universities where they basically demand that they have to go to war. One way or another, either you sign or we expel you, with posters in the hallways, in closed-door meetings, and with threats. The Kremlin has turned universities into recruitment centers as part of a campaign, and this has raised alarms among Russian families, in which, well, they are looking to recruit young people to become soldiers. Basically, the Kremlin has launched a systematic campaign to recruit students. They especially want to focus on having university students be in charge of the drones. Yes, that's the point. They don't want them on the front lines, but do want them using drones. The campaign aims to recruit youth into the Unmanned Systems Force, a military branch created in November 2024 specifically for warfare with unmanned aerial vehicles, or UAVs, which would represent a cutting-edge technological opportunity according to reports. The thing is, at the end of the day, it's a war, and if they're going to be on the front lines, even if it's with drones, obviously their lives are at risk too. It's an issue that shows the pressure to keep the conflict going at all costs, even if it means running out of university students. Another thing that also stands out is a message that the opposition leader over there in Venezuela has sent, Maria Corina Machado, in which she highlights a very interesting point, which is that she asks for elections to be held as soon as possible. The Venezuelan opposition leader and Nobel Peace Prize winner has called for elections to be held as soon as possible in Venezuela after the Interior Minister Diosdado Cabello dismissed this demand, saying we don't know what they want to extend. And here, the Venezuelan community that has written to us tells us it's clear that he wants to solidify his power. Maria Corina is here. What's her name? Delcy, right? I imagine that Maria Corina has already realized, and the opposition is realizing, that this is a game, a political game by Delcy, the Rodriguezes, Diosdado, and everyone else to stay in power, to hold on at all costs. The first protests have already started to appear, where you can also see the first signs of this so-called new government where there's also repression, and it's the same as always. So that's an issue. Well, I imagine that from Washington, they don't want to get involved, they don't want to talk about it, but at least in Venezuela, there are already movements being made with the idea of changing politicians, not the regime. Let's talk about another thing that also stands out, which is this little gorilla's birthday. Her name is Fatu. According to reports, she would be the oldest known gorilla, at least somewhere in the world. According to reports, she is 69 years old at the Berlin Zoo, so she holds the title of the oldest gorilla in the world, while her health is closely monitored and she is regularly evaluated. According to statements from the zoo, Fatu has been in Berlin for more than 6 decades. She has lived there for more than 6 decades, and that's why she is, well, the oldest gorilla on the planet. It's a topic that also draws attention. She is approaching 70 years old. Let's see if she reaches it. Hopefully she does. In addition to the oldest gorilla at the Berlin Zoo, they also have a silverback gorilla named Zango, who is 21 years old, some females named Jimbala, who is 24 Vive, who is 29 Nepensi, who is 40 and Tilia, who is 5 years old. Well, those are the gorillas they have there. Well, also, as part of this recognition they give to the gorilla, they celebrate her impressive achievement of longevity. Impressive, isn't it, right? Another thing that draws attention today is a message given by Leon himself. 14. The Pope from Algeria says God is with the humble, not with the arrogant and not with the proud, he says. Well, that's also a message that draws attention today, that there is obviously a clash between the Pope and Donald Trump, which is an issue that has also drawn a lot of attention. And well, let's move on to other matters, other interesting topics as well.
When will they stop launching missiles at Lebanese civilian infrastructure? I suppose that's your question.
I want to answer your question. Israelis don't wake up in the morning looking to launch missiles across the border. Missiles are being launched against our civilians. That is going to stop. We will not allow a terrorist organization to keep launching missiles at our population centers. That must be understood by anyone who asks such a question. The Lebanese understand that, I hope.
I hope the media can understand it as well.
Well, this is what the Israeli ambassador to the United States said to the media, because they were asking him, well, I mean, when are they going to stop firing missiles at civilian areas in Lebanon? And well, what I tried to point out, trying to see the ambassador's point of view, he says that they are being fired at by Hezbollah. Hezbollah fires at civilian areas, and Israel fires at places where Hezbollah members are. Sometimes they are in civilian areas, and that's what the people say. The Lebanese understand it in the sense that in most cases they get a warning, either with leaflets dropped by planes or with cell phone alerts telling them to evacuate the area by a certain time. Usually they are warned half an hour in advance. If you don't evacuate, you could end up in an explosion, a fire, or a bombing. It's a terrible situation. It's obviously tough. They say they won't let themselves keep being bombarded by rockets from Hezbollah in northern Israel, including civilian areas. So, in the end, it's a terrible situation they're experiencing, and well, the ambassador responds like this to the American media. Now, another issue that also draws attention is the message given by Vladimir Zelensky over there in Germany. Let's listen to what he says.
We don't want a light version of NATO or the EU. We want full membership in the European Union. I believe that the EU and NATO can really benefit from having us as partners as well. Our army, which is strong. Because no one needs a light version of the Ukrainian army in these positions. So I think this is beneficial for both sides.
Well, one topic that draws attention is this reaction. Because in this meeting, basically what he says is, hey, if we're going to belong to NATO, we're going to belong fully, not halfway. Or to the European Union, not halfway. Also, so we're not halfway with the Ukrainian army's support for NATO or for Europe, whatever it may be. Well, those are also internal struggles, because at the end of the day, there are European countries that look on with suspicion this movement, but there are also others who see it as a necessity to put a stop to Russia and say, look, we can unite with whoever we want. Don't keep advancing towards Europe, because obviously NATO or the European Union is also going to advance towards Russia. Obviously not. So, it's argued that this is a war of visions, of politics, of the future, in which Ukraine has been fighting for some time to stay on the sidelines, to stay out of the influence, Russian, and to be more influenced by NATO and Europe, right? But well, that's an issue that is still being fought over, that is still being pursued, and clearly Germany, by appearing alongside Ukraine, also shows its position. A position very close to this Starmer, who has also been firm in his stance, because Germany was very hesitant at the time, and now Germany is more in a position to support Ukraine. Let's also move on to other matters, other important news. Pay attention to the moves the United States is making right now on the issue of national security. We have to remember that their finances are pretty broken in many areas, and even the issue of security has been hit really hard. You have to look at how the lines at airports in the United States have been for months now. Right now, the Department of Homeland Security had to issue an order for something. I don't know. I imagine it was for security needs or whatever, but they gave an order to bring back all their employees. Besides the fact that they're returning, there's no sign the funds have been unblocked, meaning the funds are still blocked. But the return to work is already for the Homeland Security workers. Let's go into the details of what has been reported today because it was unexpected. The Department of Homeland Security ordered all employees to return immediately, despite the ongoing government shutdown. Technically shut down due to lack of budget, this measure breaks with decades of protocols in federal shutdowns, where only essential personnel, only that staff can continue working, the rest cannot. Now practically the entire staff has been considered at work, including critical areas like emergency response and cybersecurity, which continued operating all along. The order comes in the middle of a political blockade by Congress that prevents the release of key funds for the functioning of the government. And it is being blocked to put pressure on Trump on certain issues that they are trying to balance. For example, the issue of tariffs or internal political issues within the United States. For example, the money that they want to send to ICE, which the Democrats do not agree with ICE receiving that amount of money. And within those adjustments and those fights that happen, well, it gets blocked. Political issues in Congress prevent the release of key funds for the functioning of the government. Other important matters. There is a report from the America's Office of Fitch in which it explains to the Mexican Congress how there is confusion regarding the issue of disappearances. It's a topic that draws attention because it is explained in a very diplomatic and very clear way why there is suddenly so much sensitivity from the Mexican government when the issue of the disappeared is discussed. Because suddenly the Trumpian narrative appears like saying it's a failed state and things like that. And what they say, at least from this organization, well, let's make one thing clearer. The International Federation for Human Rights, which is FIDH, says the following. The conflict arises from a key misunderstanding. The government believes admitting forced disappearances means declaring Mexico a failed state. Ximena Reyes, representative of FIDH, clarifies that this is false. A country can have functioning institutions and at the same time face extreme violence from organized crime, or what it says, and if I read you part of the report, what it says is, look, there are entire areas of the country that function perfectly well and normally. And people go to work, they go out to the parks. I mean, they have a normal life, says and acknowledges Fitch. That a good part. A good part of the country is like this. It's, let's say, normal and calm, like any other country where people live their lives and go to work, to university, to whatever. But at the same time, she says there are other realities. There are other parts of the country that do not share that same reality. And that, well, as they say, that part also has to be acknowledged. The state hasn't failed, but some regions have serious problems that must be acknowledged. I think it's an interesting point, and also, well, let's hope there's more openness for, well, dialogue on that topic, right? According to what the CET report says, it suggests that disappearances in Mexico could be classified as crimes against humanity, which elevates the seriousness of the issue internationally. This allows for investigating not only the direct perpetrators but also the high-ranking officials and chains of command. That's something that doesn't happen today and leads to a lot of impunity. According to the report, Mexico faces this paradox. On one hand, there is institutional stability. They coexist. Institutional stability and stability in many parts of the country, but it coexists with other regions where there isn't the level of stability one would expect. The poster even calls for activating Article 34 of the CET to bring the case to the UN General Assembly, which would set a global precedent. The report also aims to open the global debate on how to address organized crime at the global level in the area of human rights. Not only in Mexico or not only in Latin America, but at a global level. The figures are compelling, more than 132,000 missing people and around 28,000 recent cases between 2024 and 2025. Or counting the last few years, that's 23,000 cases, 28,000 missing cases. Well, it's obviously a tremendous issue, a topic that needs to be further explored and not politicized. I thought the way Fitch commented on it was appropriate. Because then there's the sensitivity of politicians who suddenly see everything as an attack when it comes to sensitive topics. And it really shouldn't be that way, right? I mean, we shouldn't politicize this issue. Instead, it should be addressed urgently, obviously. By the way, there's an alert from JP Morgan, a warning about the global impact of what's happening with Mitos. Do you remember this artificial intelligence that, well, there's been so much speculation about whether it's very powerful, whether it can reveal vulnerabilities in some of the most secure platforms in the world? And that would mean that anyone with practically no hacking knowledge could become a professional level hacker without ever having been one before. Jenny Diamond, the CEO of this bank, of this JP Morgan, has warned that the impact of Mitos could be just the beginning, let's say. I mean, we're somehow making knowledge more accessible through networks, through the internet. I mean, there's a bit of everything, right? But knowledge, access to knowledge has become more democratized. The other day, there was an archaeologist, something like that, was saying that with the information available now, anyone could be or have the same level of expertise as, let's say, a top-level anthropologist or archaeologist. What? That's right. Let's say a few years. There was no access to that level of knowledge, and now anyone who focuses on it could have the same information as the top archaeologists or anthropologists of their time, right? The access is impressive, but in that sense, what JP Morgan says is that kind of access at a level of Mitos and more advanced technologies could be concerning. According to the CEO of JP Morgan Chase, he warns about the recent intelligence test. And why do the banks say this? Because the banks were among the first to be informed about this. That's why Washington held an emergency meeting after the one it had with the tech companies, with the 12 most important tech companies, Apple, Google, etc. They also had a meeting a day later in Washington, a meeting with all the banks, financial institutions, funds, etc. to tell them, hey, be careful with this. Because through those technologies, they can easily find vulnerabilities in the security of their applications, their banks, and so on and so forth. Damon acknowledged that AI tools have enormous potential to also strengthen technological defenses in the future, and with those same AI systems, well, they can also be used. Just as a place can be made more secure, well, that can also be applied in the opposite way. I mean, a more serious exposure, that is cyber insecurity, so to speak, right? According to reports, there are thousands of user points of weakness in business software in the United States. Just like that. Software that wasn't just software, but even types of files. Types of files, these kinds of emails and so on and so forth. They realized that systems they had used for decades have serious vulnerabilities. With that, it can be used as an entry point into emails, websites, servers, and so on, which are supposedly super secure. So, well, it's a really interesting topic. But it didn't make it to the market from this platform. It's not in Anthropic's AI, by the way. Some say it's too strong or powerful. Let's focus on the details. Others believe it's just marketing, as I mentioned recently. But the meetings were held officially. So, well, maybe the concern is more about probability, which is what scares them. Well, let's go to the comments. How have you been, Alberto Carlos Martinez Rublox? Greetings to the whole community. And Boldo? How have you been, Boldo? Jose Zarate Jesus Naro, how have you been? Greetings to everyone. How's it going? How's your day treating you today? The 14th already halfway through the month, moving forward, moving ahead in the year. The beginning, let's say, of the second quarter of the year isn't always analyzed, not like how the first quarter of the year was. Well, I think the most relevant thing is the fact that March was apparently the worst month in recent history. At least in terms of oil production, that's one of the relevant topics from the data, let's say. Greetings, Jose Zarate. How have you been? Namesake Fabis, how have you been? Also, a big greeting. I think Iran and the Ayatollahs will have to ask for mercy, says Carlos. How have you been, Carlos? Alberto, how have you been? Also, a big greeting. He says there are thousands of Chinese companies that, no, they congest us, they'll have to stop, says Carlos. How have you been? Temo and Alberto both say we are. I'm afraid we are. Greetings. I'm afraid we are. It's good. I'm afraid that we are. The comment is good. He says, I think the best thing is to have a serious program without jokes for those cases, even on TV. He says, how have you been, Eliseo Freire? A big greeting. Greetings and thank you very much. Thank you very much, Alba, to everyone, to the whole wonderful community. Greetings to Linda all the way in Canada. Hello there. Well, to the whole community, thank you very much, Marcela. All the way to Chile, a big greeting. Well, I'm saying goodbye for now. We'll be keeping an eye here, trying to update everything live. We'll try to update. We've already been doing it for 3 days now. I think we're fully up to date, posting all the reports and summaries live. We're uploading them to Pepe Clips in case you don't know the channel. Well, we're there too. The channel is the one with the orange logo. I mean, it's Pepe's account, but it's orange. Now it's that account. It's this one Pepe en Vivo Clips. The clips are there because sometimes I want to watch them, so they're available as clips. Here live in the long live stream. There's also the option to watch it by notes. I mean, it shows up for you in the comment, in the first comment. A few minutes later, the episodes from that account show up for you. Everything we talk about, all the reports. I just want to go straight to the Iran topic. You can skip to it, ignoring everything else. Hopefully people watch the whole thing, but if not, just skip to the topics like today's discussion on technology. That's really cool too. It's a good thing we're making the effort for it to be that way. Hopefully you like it. A big greeting to the whole community. Thank you so much for joining us. See you later in the full report tonight, and if not, there will surely be something else before then. Take care. See you later.